Here is exactly how to use and manage all of your custom fields in Jira. So jumping into our Jira instance, I'll go ahead and click on Settings on the top right, and I'll go to the Issues tab, and then on the left side we should have a tab for Custom Fields. So this is going to be our entire list of custom fields in our Jira environment where we can manage them, create them, delete them, and so on. So in order to create a custom field, that's going to be the button on the top right. I'll click on that, and then we have a few common options here that are going to be used relatively often. So things like select lists and short text, maybe paragraphs, and then there's some not so often used in this list as well. And then there's also an advanced section, which gives you the list of more advanced custom fields, and then all just kind of brings up all of those into one big list. So again, some of the most common ones that I'm going to end up using are going to be paragraph. Sometimes cascading lists can be useful if you have multiple options or multiple levels of lists that you need to show. Single choice, that's a relatively common one, as well as multiple choice if you want multi-select. Things like labels might be useful here if you wanted to manage labels on a more global scale. Short text is again very common. User picker sometimes can be useful as well. If you have a field for a manager, that would be a great field to utilize in that case. So in order to create one, I'll just select an option. Let's just go ahead and click on select list. So this is going to be a basic single choice. I'll click on next, and then depending on what you select, you'll have a couple of different options here to create that custom field. So the first thing is going to be a name, and I'll just call this product as an example. Product, and then in the options, we're going to give a couple of options here. I'll say option 1, option 2. And we could give as many as we want here. And once those are listed, I'll go ahead and click create. So now that we have a custom field created, it'll show up on our next list here. And this screen pops up to apply the custom field that we just created to a specific screen. I like to do this in the project settings itself because it's typically easier to find that specific screen that you're looking for. But if you know exactly which screen you want to apply this to, all you have to do is check the box and you're done. And if you wanted to apply this globally to all of your Jira projects, which usually is not recommended, but you would just click the checkbox at the top and that applies to everything. But again, I'll just skip this part and go back to my custom fields. And now if I search for product, I should have it showing up in my list. So it looks like I actually created a duplicate here, which is actually a big no-no. You do not want to create duplicate custom fields. That's going to mess with automations, APIs, and a lot more. So big no-no there. I'll delete that right after, but we definitely don't want to have duplicate names for custom fields. I'll show you how to work around that in a little bit. So now that we have our custom field created and we want to apply it to a screen or project, all we have to do is pull up that project. So let me go to my marketing board. And in here, the quickest and easiest way is typically going to be using the settings within the issue view. So I'll pull up a ticket and I'll scroll all the way down and click the configure button. When we click on here, you'll see that we have our context fields, our description fields, and then our hidden when empty section. So it's as simple as jumping into your field section. Sometimes you'll have it showing up in your suggested fields since that was recently created. But if not, you could just search for it and you should have a lot more options coming up. I'll grab that and I'll drag it into the section I'd like it in. So I'll just drop this, let's say, right below the reporter in the context fields. I'll click on Save Changes. Now if I go back and I refresh the page, we should have our product field showing up right below the reporter right here. And now if I select the product field, we have option 1 and option 2 showing up. So it's as simple as that to apply those fields. Sometimes, in some cases, depending on the project that you're working in, this configure might be grayed out. And there is another way to apply these custom fields when you create them. It's going to be a little bit more challenging and it does require admin permissions, but I'll walk you through that as well. So inside of the project settings on the top right here, we'll go to the screens. And screens is going to be the layouts of all of our issues based on the issue types. So you can see that we have 4 issue types here and they're all using the same screen scheme, which makes it easier for us to manage all of our issue types at once. So we have a create issue screen, and you can see that this one is different from edit and view, and then edit and view are sharing an issue screen. So in order to add one here, all we have to do is if it's a create screen that we want to add it to, so let's say I'm pulling up this create, and I want this field to show up maybe under the summary. It's as simple as going in there, adding the field in there. Same thing for edit and view issue, which is what I'll demo here. So going into the edit screen, once that pulls up, I'll go ahead and scroll down, and you can see that product was actually already applied here because I did use the configuration settings, but I'll go ahead and remove it. And now if I just search for that same field, product, and again, this is another reason why you should never have duplicate custom fields, because it's going to be hard to figure out which one you actually need. But I'll just pick one here for demo purposes. And now we have product added here. And if I go back to my project, I'll have it showing up in the same place inside of my context settings. So product, there it is. In this case, it is showing up at the bottom, and I think this is the other field, so I actually picked the wrong one in this case, but it is going to be showing up at the bottom, and I could move it in that same view to the very top to be able to show it higher on this view here, or I could just go back into configure settings and make those changes there if I have that option. So that's how to create and apply those custom fields. So let's say I have that product field and I have option 1 and option 2. Now that it's created, let's say my team comes back to me and my marketing team says, hey, we want to add option 3. So in order to manage that custom field, we'll go back to the same exact spot. I'll click on settings, issues. I'll go to custom fields, and then we'll search for that custom fields, product. And maybe I noticed that we actually have a duplicate in this case, which you should always check beforehand before creating the custom field itself. But I'll go ahead and see that there's a duplicate, and I'll think, okay, I need to rename it. So there's 2 places that we typically go to either rename, change description, or change different values of a particular custom field. And that's going to be inside of these settings. So if I click the 3 dots for that custom field, and inside of edit details, that's where we could change the name and description. And then context and default value, that's going to be where all of our values live. So option 1, 2, and 3. And then also our context, which I'll go over as well. So I'll click on edit details to change the name of the field itself. And let's say I'll just name this product, or let's say I'll name this marketing product. That way we have a unique name. And we don't have an overlap with our custom fields, and also give this a name, product field for marketing. And obviously you want to be pretty specific with this so it makes sense what it's for and who's using it, just for anyone in the future to be able to reference that and make sure that they know all the details about this custom field. So as I mentioned, editing the custom field info is going to give us the field and description, as well as the search template, which we typically never change, so we just leave that the same. So I'll update that info, and now if I go back to the custom fields, my custom fields should have changed. And if I search for marketing, I have marketing product show up. So now that we fixed our duplicate, I'll go ahead and edit the values since we need option 3 added along with option 1 and 2. In order to do that, we'll go to the context and default values setting. So I'll pop that open, and in here we have a couple of options. We can edit the context, delete a context, edit the configuration, as well as the default values. So we could set an option as the default, and then we could edit our options. So I'll edit the options since we need a 3rd one added. I'll say option 3, which is what our marketing team requested. Once I add that option and it shows up on the list, if I wanted to move it around, I could do that with these arrows here. And we could always go in and change the existing options as well, which is typically going to be a much better option than deleting specific options that we previously had. So if I needed to go in and change option 3 or option 2 to option 4, I would typically want to edit that rather than delete it and recreate it, because once we do that, all of our previous history is going to be wiped for option 2 rather than updated with option 4. So if there's a misspelling or a slight name change, you'll always want to edit that rather than deleting. And anytime you do delete, I would definitely caution you and say that make sure you're either overriding the existing option items that you have, or you don't need that option anymore. But once all those are added, we could go ahead and click on done. And then back in our settings, we see that we have all 3 options now available for us. I'll also go ahead and set a default value. So let's say that option 1 is going to be the one that we're selecting 90% of the time. So when creating a new issue and when a new issue is automatically created by automations or manually, we just want that to be the default. And then if someone needs to change it, they could change it manually. So I'll click the drop down and click option 1 and set that as the default. All right, now that we have all of our options created and our default value set, we're pretty much good to go. All of the information's been updated, and I'll go back to my marketing content project, and in here, I'll make sure that that correct field is applied. So I'll go to marketing product, throw that in under the reporter again. And let's go back here. And just a quick note, if you do change the name of a custom field, you don't really need to change anything else about it. It'll still stay in the same place. Nothing else will need to be tweaked or re-added within the project itself. So marketing product, I'll click the drop down. We now have options 1, 2, and 3. And with the default value, obviously existing issues will not be updated. But if we do create a new task or item here inside the board, I'll create a test item, and then I'll open that up. And then here you can see that marketing product is defaulted to option 1, and I could change it to whatever option needs to be changed. This is definitely a good way to go about setting default items within your fields. Typically, this is better than automation since it doesn't show up in the history logs. And if you're running those automations on issue created triggers, you're going to have that inside of your history. So it's just a little bit easier when you don't have that automation running, and it just attributes that to the person that created the issue rather than the automation that runs. And then you're also using up automation limits. So you definitely don't want to do that if you're using a standard plan or lower, since your limits are relatively low. So it's definitely the better option to just have that default within the custom field. All right, so let's say that now that we have our marketing team using the field called marketing product and our secondary marketing team, or there's another board for marketing that they're using and they want to use the same field called marketing product, but with different values or very slightly changed values. So I'll go back to my settings, issues, and then we'll go to custom fields. I'll pull up my product field. I'll find the marketing product, and I don't necessarily want to create a duplicate here and maybe give it another unique name. Let's say that I do want the same exact field, but it just needs option 5 added in this case. So I'll go back into my context in default values. And then in here, what I'll do is create a new context. So I'll add a new context right here. And inside of here, we'll have the option to set it based on issue type or project. So within the same project, we could actually have different options available, or we could just apply it to a specific project. So let's see, I have another project here. I'll use Dunder Mifflin just as an example. I'll give this a name. I'll say context for DM Dunder Mifflin. I could give it a description as well if I wanted to. Issue types, I'll apply to all of them since I'm only applying this to specific projects rather than specific issue types. And then I'll find my project for Dunder Mifflin. Let's see here, Dunder Mifflin. Oh, that might be a team managed project. I take that back. Let's go ahead and do this for IT support. So IT, we actually can't apply context or global custom fields. Well, we can apply global custom fields to team managed projects, but we can't apply specific context. So definitely keep that in mind when creating team managed projects as well. So I'll go ahead and find my IT project, IT support. And now I've created my context. I'm going to apply it to all issue types, and I'm going to apply it to only the IT support project. Once I have that created, you'll see that we have different settings in a different context. So we obviously have the default and the global one, which applies to all of our projects. And then this one specifically applying to IT. So I'll go ahead and edit my options. And then here I could create brand new options. So let's say we want very similar options to what we had in marketing, but we're going to add another option, or let's exclude one of them as well. So let's do option 1, option 3, and option 5. So again, this list might be a little bit different, but still share some of the same values. So now that we look at our two different contexts, we have one for IT and one for global. Any project using this specific product custom field, marketing product custom field, is going to be defaulting to these 3 options. And now anything related to this specific IT project, which is IT support, will have options 1, 3, and 5. So let's go ahead and apply that to our IT project. Let's go back here and open up a task item. And then in here, we'll jump into configure and we'll apply that same exact field, same name, no differences, marketing product. I'll apply this right under the reporter as well. Save those changes, and then we'll head back to our request type, give it a quick refresh. And now we have our marketing product right here. And now we have options 1, 3, and 5. And if I go back to my original marketing content board, nothing here should have been affected since it is an entirely separate context. And in here we have options 1, 3, and 5. So again, this is a great way to, if you're wanting to split up between issue types or projects while still using the same exact name and not having a lot of different custom fields for a lot of different teams or issue types, that really helps you consolidate and just use one custom field with a lot of different options and values and other things. So going back into our custom fields, there's a couple of other settings I'd like to mention. So inside of these settings, there's also translation options. So any system field is going to be translated by default into all of the languages supported by Jira. And then any custom field has to be translated manually. So if you did want to use this across your organizations, if you have overseas teams or if you have end users that are overseas and you want translation options, you'll have to do those manually for custom fields. We have the associate to screens, which is the same exact place that we get taken to once we create an initial custom field. And again, I find this a little bit more difficult to apply to, but if you do know exactly which screen or field you want to apply this to, then you could just check that box and you'll be good to go. And the very last option here is to just trash it. And then when we do move to trash, so if I pull up my marketing product field, I'll go ahead and trash it. Keep in mind that this field gets removed from all of your tickets and issues in Jira, and it removes all of the values from it. So we go to the trashed and we have it in here, and we can restore it or permanently delete it now. And then just one thing to keep in mind is that this will get permanently deleted in 60 days if there is no other action taken. So just something to keep in mind if you do delete those custom fields and if you ever need them restored. Might be worth looking into a backup option if you wanted to clean them up, but still have a backup for them on a more long-term basis. So that's been a quick overview of custom fields in Jira. If you're looking for support with Jira or any other Atlassian apps, feel free to reach out to our team directly and jump on a free consultation. We'd be more than happy to help you out.